just sent them now.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if we want to take time to look over them. Any thoughts on that, folks?
I'd just as soon pass on to the business of the day,
Yeah,
and
okay.
we can vote on them next time, right?
Okay, we got a thumbs down from Pete as well. All right. Does anybody have any non-agenda items that they want to add to the discussion? We have a pretty full plate of discussion today. But there certainly might be things that I forgot to add. If you think of something later, let me know. Is Mila going to join us, Hallie?
I thought she was. She said she would in the email, but I haven't heard from her.
Yeah, maybe she didn't. Yeah, and she told me she was going to come. So, let me just send her. Hallie, do you want to send her a quick text to see if she can join?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right, that'd be great. Because she's first on our agenda, so we can move that. I wanted to introduce Mila to everybody. Hallie, are you ready for us to chat with you, or did I give you something to make you too busy to do that?
No, that's fine. Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay. So folks, I'd like to introduce Hallie Arno, who is our intern. Well, I say our intern, she's the intern with Watershed, and Jeremy suggested that she help out in many of our energy, or the town's energy related goals. And so we've been setting her to work on a lot of writing and work with the library series of talks that Nancy has been organizing. So Hallie, from what Jeremy wrote me, there was a pretty long list, as I mentioned here, under other intern work. But Hallie, do you want to say anything, just to say hi or introduce yourself?
Yeah, it's nice to meet you all. I think I know a lot of you from Watershed. So I graduated in 2018, and now I'm at College of the Atlantic studying conservation, marine science sorts of things. So I am here to help with any of the projects that you're working on. I'm also going to be doing some stuff with Watershed and some stuff with the Maguntacook dam removal project with Allison, and maybe some solar stuff as well. So if there's any way I can be helpful to this group, please let me know.
Sounds like you've got a really, really full plate there. I'm wondering, I really want you to help with the library projects too, and that's going to be once a month for 3 or 4 months. But I'm wondering how much of your time I can legitimately claim. Will you tell me when I go over?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
No, and it's a full,
yeah, I'm hoping to work a full 40 hours a week, so I have plenty of time for a few different projects.
Okay, good.
Hallie, could you explain what your time slot is that you will be interning?
Yes, I'll be here until around April 1st. And I go back to school. But I'm still happy to come back and tune into the talks after that.
Oh, good.
Great.
Well, appreciate you working with Nancy on a lot of this PR work. And it would be good. Nancy, are you thinking of assigning her articles, or maybe we as a committee could assign her particular articles and preparatory?
Well, what I'm hoping to do, first of all, is to get a kind of an article, as you call it, a very short article that can go on the library website and can go out to our as I think I said to you in an email, Anita, we really have a paucity of organs of opinion around here these days. And so getting it wherever we can. I'm even thinking that if we could find the money to print up some kind of a card that gives a list of all of the dates and the subject matter and so forth. It could be, I don't know, it could be at places like Main Street Meats and French and Braun and stuff like that for people to pick up, because getting the word to people is the most difficult part of this. And that's where I really want to sit down with Hallie at some point. And once we get the first event, which is the March 4th event, once we get that really locked into place, then I'll feel comfortable about sitting down and really driving home what it is we're trying to do. But I want to be sure I run that past you and past Jeremy too, because I'm kind of, I don't want to step on anybody's toes, obviously, at the library or at the town office or at the committee. And on the other hand, I do have some pretty strong opinions about what we should be doing and saying. So I'll need some vetting of that. You were very good about vetting the letter to Lyman Morse, and that was terrific. And we got them on board, which is really great.
Well, thank you to Pete too for his work on that.
Yeah.
Just as an aside, you're talking about ways to publicize and get the word out, and I think that the social media aspect is probably your best bet, apart from door to door.
Yeah.
I think we have to. That should be a pretty coordinated campaign of social media postings.
Well,
around
that's
us.
something that Hallie could probably handle too, don't you think?
Yeah, I'd definitely be happy to work on that.
Yeah. We don't have, I was looking for some information about, it was about those LED streetlights, and I went to the town's webpage, and it really isn't very up to date at all. So I think I haven't checked the Facebook page for the town, for instance, but it seems to me that even if we need to create a Facebook identity for it, it's probably a good thing to do, as well as everything else.
Right. So Allison has worked very hard on her on social media connectivity with the town. I'm not sure, Mark, do you have any sense of what that, has she created her own town social media page, or?
She's been working on, I mean, for a while, that for some reason, the town Facebook page was owned by some individual. I think we finally got it back, or we've started our own. And I think she's been working on it, but I'm not up to date on where she is with it. So I think perhaps the best information is if we had a list of the things we would like to put on it, then we can, send it to Allison, because she's totally interested in spreading that word out and getting information out.
The stuff I've seen on social media of hers, and she posts a lot, is usually under her own name, even when she's talking about the McGonagall Dam project and stuff like that.
Yeah, but she does do the town. I think she does the town page as well. So if you can produce a list of things we could put on it, then I think we can get it done. Or I'll send it to me, and I'll find out if it's not Allison. I'll find out who it is and get it worked on.
It strikes me. Sorry, just back to the social media. It strikes me is that what's more important than having a page that is ours or the town's, or posting on the town page, which is likely to have some followers but not many, is that somebody who is adept at social media campaigning is what we need to be thinking about, because really what you're talking about is getting a few people with a lot of followers to be posting some of this stuff, and that's how you get the word out. I'm guessing the town of Camden has a whole lot fewer followers than maybe Allison McKellar has. So that's the kind of thing we should be thinking about, is how do you strategically set posts to be spread by people who have a lot of influence and followers on these social media sites. It's not a trivial. It's not trivial.
On Facebook, there are those, this Camden, Maine.
Sure, but
it's not an official town of Camden site.
Facebook is liable to get a small proportion of social media followers. You're not going to get the youth following. You're not going to get the professional following. I think that there's. I guess I'll just finish this by saying, if we want to get the message out and we want to get it out widely, then we have to be thinking strategically about social media, not just posting here and there. It needs to be well thought out. Somebody needs to spearhead that.
Pete, I'm happy to take that on and work on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook content. I feel like that's something I'm fairly familiar with. So if someone
Excellent.
wants to have a meeting sometime and just give me all the information and things like that, and I can work on some graphics and things like that.
Cool.
That would be great. And is it Haley or Hallie? How's your name pronounced?
It's Hallie.
Hallie. Nice to meet you. I'm Heather.
Nice to meet you too.
I'm also thinking about a couple people I know. One in particular who would be great to have just ask if they're interested to repost on Instagram, because if that's what it's called on Instagram, because I have at least for like high school age, there's a couple of people in town that most of the kids look to for that type of information. So I'd be happy to sort of like let those people know that you're here now and what you're doing too, and see if we can help make the connection that way.
That'd be great. Yeah, thank you.
So I'm thinking obviously about getting publicity out about these library talks, but I think you, Pete, are thinking in a much broader way of more information to reach more people.
Well, you could start with the library talks as a way of, because I think the library talks would be a good metric as to how well your social media campaign succeeded,
Right.
because you'll know how many people show up on the Zoom meeting. So I think that yes, partially we need to have a larger, outreach so that people know, for example, that the town did this lighting change and how much it's going to save, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But maybe we could start small and use the library as a way to figure out, okay, how do we do this? How successfully? What would the metrics look like to mean success? And and then learn from that and build on it.
Great. So Hallie, you and I should get together at some point and talk about that. And then you can go on and check in with everybody else, including Heather and Pete and so forth, to see how to, but also yourself, because you're far more competent at this sort of thing than I am. I'm so old, I still think Facebook is revolutionary.
Meanwhile, everybody else has moved on, right?
Yeah.
And my thinking is more like, I don't have time for that.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm not sure about why Mila hasn't been able to join us. I don't have a phone number for her, but I did send her an email, and she was planning to join us. So we'll just put that off for now. Nancy and Hallie, do you have questions or anything you want to discuss regarding the webinar series for the library?
Well, I'd like to just very quickly, I have a one-page document here and I can reduce it to by half at least, just to let you know, make sure that we're all understanding exactly what's going on, so that if anybody has any input at all, or if anybody says, oh, you can't have that guy, he's a total crook, you can intervene at this point. Otherwise, speak now or forever hold your peace, kind of thing. So I'm happy to go through that right now if you'd like.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the first one is on March 4th, and that's going to be the one that focuses on energy conservation and efficiency and so forth with private residences. And I think we will include—
Excuse me, Nancy, would it be possible, do you have it digitally? You could share your screen with us and we could look at it, and it would take about 30 seconds.
I don't know how to do that, Pete. I told you, I think Facebook is revolutionary. If I could do it, let me see if I can. There's a way to share, isn't there?
Yeah, you just scroll down to
screen.
the bottom of your screen, say share screen, and then you can
Right.
just if you have the document up, you just
I
click
don't have it up. That's what I have to do, is go and find it. Yeah.
Maybe next time.
Yeah, I think next time. In any case, I believe that I have sent you all most of this information over the course of the last couple of weeks as it's developed. But I just wanted to bring you up to date on where we are right now, and especially the fact that we're going to do at least 3 of these, and I'm hoping that we'll do a 4th one if the first 3 are well attended and there's interest. So the first one is the one that's going to focus on private residences. And as I said, I'd like to get in renters and rental problems in rental properties a little bit there, but mostly it's focusing on people who own their own homes. The people who have committed to that so far are Brian Robinson, and Brian says that Dana Fisher from Mitsubishi is very eager to join in. And we've also, I think with Heather, we're going to get someone from Revision, and probably Bill, whose last name I don't have written down here, who is a co-founder of Revision and who lives here in Camden. So that's 3 people committed to that. And the 4th person that I would like to have on that panel is Sarah Holland, who's one of the 2 partners in Holland and Foley, who do a lot with building energy efficient housing. So that would be March 4th. And then
Nancy, can I just add in on that?
Yeah, sure.
So I heard back from Bill Behrens today, who's one of the Revision co-founders who lives here in town, who a lot of people know. He demurred. He said he's just, with his position in the company, he's not really in the nitty-gritty of the residential work anymore enough to be the best person to speak about it. So he suggested that we have somebody else who's actively doing the residential work. There's someone who lives in town here named Brandon Mazur, and he has done sort of Solar 101 presentations lots of times before that are not Revision specific, but are more about the technology. So I was gonna follow up with him next to see if he could do it. It'd be nice because he's a Camden resident. There's a couple of other people, I guess, in Lincolnville. So if Brandon's unavailable, then one of them will be able to do it.
Okay, I really think we need somebody from Revision to talk about solar. That's going to be an important piece of that. So that would, whoever it is from Revision, and I'll trust you, Heather, on that, because you know the people and you know the subject matter. Heather gave me a very good explanation of what a Tesla wall is the other day. I had no idea. Second one is April 1st, and that's the one that's going to focus on what I call downtown businesses. And thanks to Pete, we've got Lyman Morse geared up to be a part of this. And I think that's going to be really, really great, because I'm sure they're doing some very forward things with their new construction over there. The other people I thought of getting involved in this, at first I thought of French and Webb. I'm sorry, French and Webb, they're in Belfast. French and Braun. But then I realized that Sandra from Zoot and her husband are taking over the building next to French and Braun, the whole building, and apparently going to do a major revision of it. So that might be very interesting people to have in there to talk about, you know, using a historic Camden building and bringing it up to date. I haven't spoken with them yet, but I'd like to get them involved. I thought possibly Raymond Brunyansky at Camden Harbor Inn and Natalie's Restaurant, because the demand from tourists, especially for air conditioning in the summertime, is, you know, it's a big energy consumption, and it's something that people really have to think hard about. So that's my thought about that one. The third conversation, May 6th, is the one that's going to focus on the town and the town's own efforts. And that's where I hope Jeremy will play a major role in that. And I've also thought about asking Davis Saltonstall, since he's a local resident, but he's also Rockland's sustainability consultant or expert, or I'm not sure what his title is, but he too would be a good person on that. And Beatty, because she is so passionate about the role that trees and tree planting can play in the town's overall approach to energy conservation. So I've asked her if she would speak to that. And then again, assuming that these three are well attended and effective, I'd like to do a fourth one on June 3rd, looking at the state as a whole and examining the climate action plan and seeing how Camden and the Mid-Coast fits into that climate action plan. I thought I might ask Hannah Pingree if she has time to be the kind of spearhead for that particular group, but that's a long way ahead. So those are the three and probably four things that we've planned, one a month from now until, well, right through the spring.
Nancy, it strikes me that we're leaving out potentially, or let's make sure we don't leave out an important part of that first one, which is the community solar that is now starting to become available in Camden. So
Right.
it'd be good to get a representative, because that is probably the quickest way, and Hallie and I have talked about this a little bit, the quickest way to get people off of the standard offer, which is primarily fossil fuel based energy mix for the state of Maine, that we would have either somebody who could speak knowledgeably about how to go about enrolling in these. I think there's 3 or 4 companies now in the state of Maine that are, vying for customers to buy into these community solar farms. And the ones that I've seen are basically giving a 15% discount on the standard offer to enroll. So I think that would be important to include in the first session, and I don't know how best to do that.
Okay, that's not something that Revision would speak to. Then.
Well, it might be, because Revision is also a player in that market. They're looking, as far as I understand, they're looking for individual consumer subscribers also, but I don't know that for a fact.
Yes, you're right, Peter. Revision is doing some community solar farms for residences and small businesses right now. There's 2 different models for those, and whoever comes from Revision will be able to talk about both of those. One is the subscription model, which we're all getting Nexamp or other flyers in the mail for 15% off, where you sort of buy in. And then the other is where you actually buy in as an owner to a % share in the solar farm. And it's that second model that Revision is offering right now, but Revision's actively considering the other model and certainly is familiar with it and can describe it. So that's a really good point. I think that one of the easiest and fastest ways for most people to get onto clean energy is to do that.
So I'm wondering whether will there be time to present all the different subject matter and speakers in the 1 hour time slot? That's, I feel like the first talk is there's just a lot there, a whole lot. And I'm wondering, does anybody have any ideas of how to make that work, or to divide it in half or something like that?
You mean divide the time in half, or have 2 separate meetings?
2 different presentations, or extend the time or something. I mean, I'm just not sure.
Well, I can offer some guidance on that. What we've done at Watershed productively is a Pechakucha format, where basically you have if there's 4 presenters, they each get 20 slides at 20 seconds, 20 slides, and then they're done. And so it forces the presenters to be extremely careful about their presentation. And so what you can do is you get a lot of information passed in a short amount of time. And then if it were me, what I would do is say, okay, for 15 minutes here, we're going to have breakout rooms on Zoom, and you can go to one of these breakout rooms if you want to learn more, so that you can get a lot accomplished. People can make their pitches, And then people can go into the areas that they're more interested in learning more about, and it's quite efficient.
So would the breakout rooms take the place of the Q&A session at the end?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think what happens with the Q&A session, if you've got too many people, that you sort of risk people wandering away because
Right.
they don't want to wade through information that they're not interested in. Whereas if you said, okay, those of you who are interested in the subscription model of solar, Joe Bob is going to have a breakout room that can answer questions specific to that. Those of you who are interested in heat pumps can go to this breakout room. Those of you who are interested in energy retrofit can go to this breakout room, and that way you get people where they need to be more quickly.
I think that's a great idea.
Just a quick question. I think I know the answer, but quick question. And then all of those would be available for people to go back to when it.
I don't see why not. That's not, there's nothing technologically barring that.
Okay. So we would want to be, I think it would be very important that we make certain that those are all there. So if they're more than one, or for all the people that listen into it later, not at the exact moment when it's taking place, that sort of thing. I would think if we're going to go for a lot of the substantive information to be given out at those rooms in the discussion, that we make sure those are available still online along with the main.
Well, I will talk with Julia Page at the library and make sure that that's something she's comfortable with, both with the presentation itself and then with the availability of the information afterwards.
Right.
I think if the speakers could also develop a brief synopsis, bullet points of their information, in particular contact information, that they could email, and just in their talk give their email address so that people have an opportunity to request their own outline, their copy of the outline of that person is presenting. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe there's a way to present those outlines.
Well, you can do it 100,000 ways. They can be, posted to social media, group links. There could be a wiki. There could be a web page. Finding the information is not all that difficult once you know what's going on. Right. So I think the primary role, correct me if I'm wrong, Nancy, is to get people thinking about, these are possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you know that they're there, I mean, finding out the information is the least problem. I mean, it's information overload. There's too much information.
I think the library is very good about that too. They have been, when I've worked with them in the past, the talks have gone up on YouTube and remained available on YouTube for free. So a lot of that information can go with the YouTube presentation for people to, further information, that kind of thing.
Jeff, can you pick that up? Yeah, so Pete, I'm wondering if you might be willing to work hand in hand with Nancy in devising what method to use, and she could become comfortable with that and just figure that out instead of just throwing her the information that there's a lot of ways to do this.
Well, I don't think Nancy needs to bother herself about any of that, because the library will take care of that.
Right. Yeah, they're very, very sophisticated about this sort of thing. So,
and I'm perfectly happy to check in with the library and say, how are you going to do this? Could I suggest some pieces of information or websites that you put in your show notes? Because that's, if they're putting it on YouTube, then there'll be show notes that they can put below it, and so all the links can be in the show notes. So that's fairly trivial.
If I could jump in here just for a minute, I'd like to point out that in this conversation, Pete brought up a particular piece of subject matter, which is the community solar initiatives. and that we're kind of talking about two things here. And I think it's one of them is the method of getting information, you know, the specifics of all the things that you can do with online communication, which is obviously important. But before we get too much in the weeds with that, I think spending a little more time talking about what is essential here as far as information, because there is too much information. You know, people could get very much into the technical aspects of solar, or the how someone might put it on their own house. But I think that it's really important. You know, Pete brought this one topic up that really should be there, and I think that it may be necessary or helpful to limit the topics that each of the presenters comes up with. It might be really helpful to ask them to give us an outline, and to say, for us to look at the outlines and to say, would you focus on this, or have you considered this? Just to make certain that that these presentations fill the bill. I mean, I'm assuming that one of the things that we want will be for people to come away with practical methods that they can get involved with, either in their own homes or their own businesses or whatever they're doing. And so that that would be one thing that we could ask of the presenters, that this should be something that people can come away with.
Well, I think that's kind of understood about the whole thing, actually, Phil.
Well,
I mean, in organizing the thing and getting people together to talk, you have to make sure they have something to say and a cogent way to present it. So it's kind of my job, with the help of all of you, to make sure that this happens this way. I think, you know, with each of the presenters, I'll make sure they understand what we're looking for, and then I'll ask them to let me know. And also, you know, the time limit on it is going to be very constraining to people. So I think, you know, it's in a very incipient mode right now, but shaping it, getting it ready to take public is going to be part of the challenge. And I appreciate that you don't want information overload, certainly, but you do want to make sure that the information that's needed, or I guess what more than information, what you want to do is stimulate interest in the topic, so that people will continue to come back and find out more and go to those breakout sessions and that sort of thing.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Thank you, Nancy. Yeah, that sounds great. Is it okay if we move on to the next item?
Yeah.
Okay. Hallie, I was going to ask you to, I put on the agenda all the different things that Jeremy had mentioned, and then you added to that about the Montgomery Dam and the Megunticook River. And you had said that you kind of wanted to hear from the committee about where they would like you to focus. So is there anything from beyond what we've discussed already that you wanted us to talk about, or that you wanted to communicate with us?
Yeah, so it sounds like social media might be the place to focus on. Is that correct?
I think so.
Awesome. Yeah, the other thing that I was thinking of is we're thinking about either making a website or just a web page on Watershed's website to put up all of the watershed reports and highlight some of the climate work that they're doing. And I think we could definitely put up some of the stuff that the town is doing as well, if people wanted a place to have all of those links put together about how to get solar and what efficiency main is and things like that, if that would be useful. But that could also be a separate project.
I would suggest that the same be put on the town website. The town has a different, on its menus, it has all the committees listed, and then you click on the energy committee, and then there, if I'm not mistaken, you can find things that and links that relate to what we are doing and have done. So that would be the place where I haven't checked, but I'd like to see those watershed reports, and other material that you might be developing would go there. At least, if
Yeah,
not.
okay, great. I'll put that all in
So
a folder and send it to you.
To facilitate that, Mark, who would Hallie talk to at the town to either get a hold of permission to post on the Energy Committee site, or to, who's the liaison to get content onto and what is the process for vetting, if there is one, so that, this can be streamlined?
It needs to be vetted, and it would have to go through Audra. She's the town, there's nobody else. I think she has to be the person that goes through. But you could start, Allison, like I said, is very involved. So you could start with Allison if you wanted to, about social media, what the plans are. And then, but to get it on the town website and, to vet stuff, it really needs to go through Audra.
Okay,
Mark,
great.
do
I
you think
can
it would be
in touch.
possible to ask Audra to sort of have a kind of pre-meeting with Hallie to lay out, what format and kind of, how much information or what it is that it would need to sort of come looking like, so that
Sure.
then Hallie could go away and put it all together and then be able to bring it back, hopefully all set and ready to go.
I'm making a note here. I'll call Audra tomorrow and talk to her to see if I'm wrong, if there's another way to do it, but I'll call her tomorrow and see if I can set something up.
Yeah, that'd be good. So Hallie, does this all, do we just assume that the town's commitment to the global covenant, Mark, that's something Jeremy said that Hallie could be working on. And then the question I had for Amila Plavsic, the teacher, Watershed has this new climate action and leadership lab there at Watershed, and they were hoping to do something significant for the town. And I spoke to her about the comprehensive plan not really reflecting the direction we're already going, that we'd like to see that in the comprehensive plan. So there are various things at town level that Watershed is anxious to help us with.
Okay, I'll add that. I'll add that to my Audra call. And
I think we've been in touch with Allison about that as well. And I think a lot of what she was talking about having us focus on was looking at zoning requirements and sea level rise, as well as an overview of the comprehensive plan. But I think we're still open to suggestions if this committee has any projects that you think need working on.
Can I ask a question here that might sound a little bit rude, but I love the Watershed School and I'm very glad it's here as part of our community. But why has the committee reached out to the Camden Hills Regional High School at all to see what they're doing with climate change?
Yeah, well, we've worked with the wind planners and through Watershed, and the wind planners, it really depends on the student group for that particular year as to what sort of how much, no pun intended, energy gets put into it. And I think Margot Murphy, who last I knew was running wind plant, was the faculty coordinator for wind planners. It is really dependent on student leadership, and so when you have that, you might see something useful coming out of the high school. And when you don't, things get pretty quiet. So that I think is, that's my take on how that works over there.
I would have to say that at different times they've been approached for different varieties of things. And I think they have a more structured schedule there. the things they have to get done, and they haven't had the freedom that Watershed has had to change things around and go in different directions, which is one of the advantages of, you know, why people go to Watershed. I think Hallie would probably agree with that. And I think they have a bit more of a rigid format that they have to stick to and have been able to, they've showed interest, but they haven't been able to participate as much as they'd like.
Yeah, I mean, in Watershed, it's part of the curriculum. And the wind planners, it's a after-school activity.
Mhm.
Yeah, that, I think that's a significant difference right there. Not that they wouldn't, that they don't accomplish a lot. They do, the wind planners, and I'm very proud of what they've done. And Nancy, I agree. You know, I can certainly make a call to Margot and, you know, see what her thoughts are on the involvement of wind planners.
Mhm.
But do we have specific things we want to ask of them, or?
Well, one of the things I would ask of them in that third conversation about the town as a municipality and its responsibility for energy conservation. The school board is not part of the town, it's separate from the town, but it certainly has a huge influence on the town. And it might be, I think there was some controversy about the building of the middle school and whether it would have solar panels or rely on some other form of heat extraction. I wasn't really familiar with what was going on there, but, and I don't know that they have plans for any construction, major construction in the immediate future. But the school board is certainly very heavily involved in buildings that are part of the town, not the town of the capital T, but the town of the small t. And it's possible that somebody from the school board should be on that third.
Well, if you wanted somebody to be on that third panel, I would suggest the facilities director for the 5-town district, whose name escapes me.
It's Keith
you're
Rose.
thinking about Keith Rose, but he's retired. So
He's retired.
Doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Get him.
He'd
Get
still
him
come
anyway.
though. I think he would still do it.
Get him anyway, because Keith Rose is single-handedly responsible for the solar panels on the high school, and you know, was very involved early on in determinations of how the middle school would be heated, and the HVAC systems and the air sealing regime. So that guy it has been committed to energy reductions from a cost perspective for more than a decade. So that's somebody. Keith
I think
Rose.
I totally agree. And I also think Keith would be great because of the fact that there's a geothermal potential at the Snow Bowl that we're going to be looking at now, because he led the geothermal at the high school and at the elementary school. And the new middle school is not geothermal, but it's heated with excess heat off of the wastewater treatment plant, which is really cool. And so he also, I think, spearheaded the effort to have both the high school district, the 5-towns district, and our CRMS and CRES, Rock Park Hamden district, buying solar from a municipal community solar farm, which, you know, our school district is really out in front in the state on being one of the early ones into that. So I think there's a bunch of different ways in which Keith has sort of led the charge and could be helpful. I mean, from my perspective, I think the school districts are way out in front of the town in terms of how much they've greened their operations. I mean, I think we're almost 100% clean energy in the school districts now with the community solar farm purchases that the school districts have done.
But can anybody remember the man's name?
Yeah,
It's Keith. His name is Keith Rose.
Okay.
like the flower. Rose, like the flower.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I can put you in touch with him, Nancy, if you want, if that would be
Great.
helpful.
Okay, that'd be terrific.
Great, thank you very much. Those are all great ideas. I'm going to move on down the agenda so we can try to finish up. Energy Committee Chairmanship. So I submitted I submitted an application to be on the planning board in Camden. I was asked to do so, and I was tempted to do so because of the position being able to bring energy considerations into actual ordinances and things that the town actually has to do, that applicants and so on. So they accepted my application last night, and I'm nervous about that effort and involved, and you know, it's new for me, but I'm also excited about the potential that you know, the ways that it could help the town. So I've been chair for 5 years. This is the 6th, and we don't need to do a vote now, but I just wanted to mention that. I think I might like to withdraw from chair of the Energy Committee in order to be able to invest that time in the planning board. So if you guys could be thinking about chairmanship, and maybe we could talk about it again next time and see whose hand goes up, right? Who wants to carry the torch?
Not mine. Does that mean we have to we have to replace you on this board with another body?
No,
On the committee? Apparently
On the
not.
committee, yeah.
I can still serve on the committee, right, Mark?
yes,
Mark?
absolutely. Yeah, no, she does not have to. You can be on multiple committees.
Okay.
But the planning board is an extensive amount of work, and I think it makes sense to, you know, she's gonna, you know, be putting a lot of time and energy into that. And I think it makes sense to you know, step down from chairmanship and bring someone else up, especially because she's done it for 5 years. And
So I hope you and others will consider that. And I wanted to mention that, let's see, I've got it down a little further on the list, but I'm going to just throw it in here with regard to committee appointments. The select board is interested in taking a big umbrella look at committees in general for the town, and they don't want to actually officially assign new members to any committees until they sort out some things. So like in the case of Heather, your interest in the committee, I'm hoping that you'd be willing to consider yourself a member of the committee until that membership can become official. The fact that they haven't chosen to address membership has nothing to do with our committee or with you. It's related to all committees. The select board is probably feeling a bit overwhelmed because every committee gets excited about what they want to have done for the town, and the town needs to kind of sort out their priorities and how
I
to
can
manage
say,
that enthusiasm, right, Mark?
I can say at last count, I think we counted 26 different committees, and everyone in all the committees does amazing work, does great things, but what happens is a lot of it gets funneled up to the town staff. And that's been a problem because we have a small staff and they're overwhelmed, and they try to do the best they can, but it's taking away from some of the priorities they need to be working on. So what we're going to do is sort of look and figure out how best to work with the committees. And we're thinking maybe about, you know, working on specific, for instance, we gave CDAC the project of working on the tannery applications. And they spent 2 or 3 meetings going through it line by line, basically, and did an excellent job and really saved us a lot of time and really did a lot of things. There's a lot of things the Energy Committee has done already that they sort of took on, you know, streetlights and you know, so much like that. but I think and the first solar farm. But I think if we can, as a select board, figure out, okay, here's the key things we need people to help us with, and sort of move it down instead of, having to deal with, well, we've got 5 different projects that we want the town to work on. And when you multiply that by 26, it gets a little bit overwhelming. So everybody's a little like, how are we going to do this? And we don't know yet.
Well, that all makes sense to me. I'm not questioning it, but just one particular question here. Now, given that Anita's retiring, what if someone wished to, say, nominate Heather to be the next chair, or Heather wishes to go for it? I mean, it would be nice if we could get action on that one.
I agree. I'm not part of the 2 people that plan the schedule. And I'm sort of, I don't quite understand, and I'll need to get into it the next meeting. Why aren't we appointing people to panels that need to do it, especially where we have openings? And I thought Heather's application was going to come up when we did the planning board. I don't know why it didn't, but that was just last night. So I don't understand what the confusion is there, and I need to dig into that a little bit more, because I think she should have been okayed right away.
Yeah,
But
Mark, I asked Bob, and I asked Bob Cassiani, and my understanding was that it related to the big umbrella question.
The big umbrella is a problem, but I think sometimes you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, as they say. Heather, you beat the baby then, I guess. So.
No,
I'm happy to participate as an observer for as long as it's helpful.
When it did come up at a meeting, I think the meeting before, it didn't come up last night, the meeting before we were talking about it. The one thing I made sure that I mentioned is anybody in town is allowed to attend any meeting and contribute. The only thing they can't do is vote. But in terms of participation, guidance, suggestions, there's no restrictions. So all you have to do, Heather, is not vote when they ask to okay the minutes, and that saves you from having to read the minutes every week. So we're saving you time.
Okay, so that's the story there. I did actually kind of lean on Bob a bit about this, and I didn't see, shall we say, and it was more like what you said, Mark. You're welcome to attend. You just can't vote. So we just have to sit tight for a little while on that one. Heather, I'm sorry about that. And I do appreciate very much your interest in participating in this committee. It's great. Awesome. Efficiency Camden. I didn't know whether I had anything to add to that. That's kind of a placeholder in the agenda. I don't feel like I have anything to add. Mark, you probably don't either.
I don't either at this point. I think right now we've been super focused on, and I know you sent a great email out about it, but Monday's town meeting and getting the Siemens contracts okay is the primary importance for us. That will save us so much energy. It'll work on so much infrastructure. It's like there's so many wins in that program. That's the thing we've most been concentrating and hoping to get done, and that's next Monday.
So, Mark, can I ask you a question about?
You can.
That Siemens contract and the vote.
You can.
So
I don't know that I have the answer.
Yeah. So is it the fact that we're voting on which of the 3 proposals, or only up and down on the first proposal?
I think it's up and down on the first proposal. And I had a discussion with Bob about your question about the geothermal. And, it's, we discussed it because Brian had a question about the geothermal. Doing geothermal at the Snowball is very expensive. But
it's $500,000.
And we discussed it. And the question was, we're thinking more about the future because it's also preparation for the future, a new lodge. We still get a lot of pressure for building a new lodge and new such a thing. So, and in terms of the energy saving and such like that, over time, it is $500,000. Now, over time, it will hopefully pay for itself. So, it's an expensive proposition, but and going back and forth, I think it's worthwhile to move in that direction. But I believe it's just a up and down proposal on the first proposal. And,
Yeah,
and the other things I'll say about the monies, the reason we moved to a town meeting so quickly are a couple different reasons. Number one, Siemens we needed to get the contract on for them so they can start a bunch of the work. And number two, the interest rates are so low right now that we're actually saving a considerable amount of money, because the interest rate we have for the proposal, if we can get it okay, is substantially lower than we even scheduled. So the prices are lower than they were on the proposals that we saw.
Yeah. So was there any discussion about the fact that we're being asked to spend an additional $500,000 to save $2,000 a year? The payback on that is astronomical.
The payback is, but it's also an energy savings, and that was the other part. And
no, that's the energy savings that I'm talking about. It's $2,000 a year.
But you're talking about it financially. We discussed it in terms of, usage of, setting an example using non-oil based energy and stuff. It wasn't just about money. It was in the discussion I had with Bob, and where we thought, you can make a decision about it one way or the other, but we thought that making that example was worth it,
So,
and it's a tough call.
So I'm sorry, I'm not totally up to speed on this, but $500,000 for, to buy into a solar farm sounds like you could get a whole lot better return on investment than geothermal. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you could get better than $2,000, and I would imagine that Heather could address that for us if it were necessary. I like the rest of the proposal, but that piece just drives me nuts. Right. Because it's so little value. For $500,000, we could put all the police officers in Teslas and save a lot more carbon.
Yeah, the difference, I think, is like Teslas, right? We need to electrify the heat for everything in order to then buy the solar and have it all be clean. And so to Mark's point, you're replacing oil with geothermal, or you're replacing oil with heat pumps. Like that's the equivalency, right? And then once you're electric, because you're on geothermal or you're on heat pumps, then you can buy the solar to cover the electric. But you do need to do that transition from oil onto either geothermal or, it's either ground source heat pumps or air source heat pumps, right? But one or the other, once we do those in all the town buildings, once we've electrified the heat, and the HVAC, then we can purchase the solar. So it's not an exact equivalency, right?
Well, but that's true, except that we already have a massive we have effectively electrified the Snow Bowl because it's snowmaking. The snowmaking is the big expense, and that's electric. So I actually don't think you're correct in your analysis there. We're already electrified at the Snow Bowl. The heating costs are minimal. It's the snowmaking costs that are the big.
But the geothermal would be for the heat, right?
But the heat is exactly. So there's so little heating load that, in terms of, if you're talking about fossil fuel energy reduction at the Snow Bowl, it's already electrified in terms of energy use. So we need to offset the electric energy use that we now have on the standard offer with solar, which is what we've been trying to do for 5 years to very little effect.
Guys, all this is fine and it's a great discussion, but do we really want to have a record out there on the on the town website that says, you know, the solar committee appeared, the energy committee appeared, you know, to have doubts about this entire proposal and maybe won't back it.
Let me say,
That
yeah.
concerns me. I would like it to look like the energy committee backs it. Sorry.
Let me say a couple other things. Right now, you're looking at the savings for this particular building, which will go at some point, and it's also has to do with air conditioning, not just heat. That will be a big part of any future building as well, because we're getting warmer, and that's going to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Right, but if we build it well enough, if we devote a small portion of the 500,000 into building well, really well, the demands will be de minimis, and then you heat it and cool it with heat pumps. This is economically nonsense to spend $500,000, even if we were going to save $10,000, which we're not, and we're not going to be anywhere close to. There's so many more effective things that could be done with that. And the town's indebtedness is going up dramatically, or I should say the citizens' indebtedness, because of the $5 million cost overrun on the middle school, et cetera, the $13 million that we're going to need for this septic upgrades. You know, we're asking for a lot, and this just, I personally can't get behind that. And I think Peter may feel the same way, and there may be other voices on the Energy Committee. What upsets me is that the select board was forcing it into a up or down vote on a single proposal, as opposed to, you know, which of these three proposed should we go for?
I think, you know, Pete, if your home were the A-frame and you live there, I don't think that you would think that the amount of energy spent on the heat of that building is de minimis. So I'd be careful about how you characterize that. That building they've decided to keep it, and it's got no insulation. And
right. But the elephant in the room is that the town of Camden's energy use, the vast majority of it, not vast majority, but the single biggest line item, as we know from the watershed report, is snowmaking at the Snow Bowl.
Right.
It's not the heat of the A-frame. So what I'm saying is that if you're concerned about the fossil fuel footprint of the Snow Bowl, it's not the lodge that's the fossil fuel footprint.
Right, I understand that. And we are, and that energy for the snowmaking is electric, right?
Yes.
So is it now, or is it diesel?
No, it's electric, but that electric comes from standard offer.
All right, so the town is working on that, and that's an update.
Actually, I'm mistaken. That's not true. The town's energy comes from, it is a purportedly green energy through RECs, but as we all know, RECs are somewhat slippery.
Isn't that Constellation?
Constellation.
So
one other thing I'll add about the electricity, we are looking into the snowmaking as well. There's a study going on about that as well, because we don't think it's being done properly. So
is that something also that Siemens is looking at, Mark?
yes,
Part of this proposal?
yes.
Yeah.
It's not part. It's a part two, and they're looking at it, and I've gotten some initial stuff back that I can't talk about yet, but we're looking to save energy there as well.
Okay, and don't forget, as I'll just remind you what Mark did say a little bit earlier, is that the heat and air conditioning of the new, as so far a non-existent lodge, but that will need to be heated and air conditioned, and this geothermal presumably would be doing that as well, working towards, for the same system.
And I can say, but when we had our conversation, we were uncomfortable with it. We were like, not sure, but in terms of the example going to the future, knowing there's going to be a new building, perhaps a bigger building, it will be summer use as well, much more summer use as well. That was sort of, that was a decision that we stayed with this one, but I will bring it up with them again before Monday.
Wasn't there supposed to be a public meeting before you go to the vote?
There was. It was we called a public meeting, and very few people showed up. We had discussion with the select board.
But it was at a select board, wasn't it? Meeting.
Yes.
Yeah. So it wasn't a separate open public meeting.
No, it's a
You need a public hearing.
Forum. It's a public it's a public forum as part of the select board meeting. It was advertised and called, I believe, and yeah, no, there's not a separate. We don't do a separate non-select board meeting to work on things on the warrant. We have an open public meeting as part of and we had it as part of one of the select board meetings. But it was.
Well, yeah, I tried to tie into it, and I couldn't tie into it because you had to tie into it in advance. It was a very poor, in my opinion, excuse for a public forum.
We are all having problems. We're working it. We've changed it in the last couple of weeks, the last couple of meetings to try to do this. I've been arguing to have a different format for 6 months for the meeting, and they finally have started in the last 2 meetings. I wish it were all easy and I could just wave my hand and go, this is easy, but this has been a difficult time. And we've had lots of discussions about the public.
I would like to see the Energy Committee get behind the Siemens proposal, and I hear that you're not totally comfortable with it, and I'm wondering, Mark, do you have clarity on? I don't even know if it's too late to actually make adjustments before the vote.
I will make a call to Bob tomorrow and discuss this with him again. I'll find out. And maybe it is for all three. Maybe it is for all 3 votes, but I don't believe it is. I believe it's for the section number 1.
It's an important energy proposal that includes a heck of a lot more things as well. So we've got to figure out what I would like to see some support for this approach.
I feel like what would be helpful, clearly people on this committee who have enough technical knowledge who are in the industry, right? So asking good questions about why was Siemens recommending air source heat pumps in some of the buildings? There's a recommendation to change the oil boiler in the library to propane. There's a recommendation for geothermal ground source heat pump at the Snow Bowl, where there's air source heat pumps at other buildings. So like, why, right? What were the decision criteria? I assume that that's somewhere in the details of something that Siemens presented, but all that we have, at least all that I've seen, is, I think, the overview PowerPoint, which just details like, here's what we're recommending at each of the buildings, not why is it propane at the library and geothermal at the Snow Bowl. So I don't know, Mark, if there's somewhere you can point people in this group too who might be more interested in those details, who don't just trust Siemens to have made those distinctions on their own.
There are huge reports. There's a big report. I don't know if it's on the website or not. I can't tell you that off the top of my head right now.
Yeah, I'm on the website and it is absolutely not there. And I was assured that I'd get a copy of that Siemens report that's never been distributed. All there is a very top shelf summary, which is incredibly unacceptable, in my opinion, for a 2-point-so many million indebtedness that we're looking to go into, essentially, or a performance contract. I mean, I think there's a lot of good stuff in there, but this extra $500,000 is costly and ineffective.
What concerns me, even to a certain extent, is that what is the point of the Energy Committee if it's not to help the town and advise on energy matters. And it seems like we haven't had any input whatsoever into this. And not even, I did miss the last meeting, so I could be mistaken here. But it would sure be good, just neighborly policy to say, hey, we're going to do this big energy change to our town facilities. Let's get the energy committee to weigh in, and on some sort of a short timeline, so we're not dragging this thing out. But it seems a bit odd.
I'm not going to get into the politics of it. We worked really hard and a long time, and these meetings have been going on for a long time. If you wanted to be involved, there was a time a long time ago to bring it up the week before. And I believe, Pete, you were gone the last two meetings that we could have discussed this. I can't tell you. I will make some calls tomorrow. I'll have some more calls. I understand Brian's point, and I understand all your points as well. There are other things. This is not the only thing we're doing. It's not the only thing we will do. We're still working on all the things. It's this program. You can argue, I think, the reasons for the geothermal, there's reasons against it. But there are so many other good things about it. And I can't sit here. I'm not experienced enough and knowledgeable enough to go, why is this one propane? Why is this one this? Why is a heat pump there? It's not my expertise. Now, I can say that I've listened to all the discussions, read the reports. It makes sense to me. I've also asked Bob for counseling. He is in construction. That's his business. That's his expertise. And he is very comfortable with it. And he is very happy with it. And the guarantees we get in terms of energy savings and cost savings are substantial at a time when that's what we're trying to do. I'm not here to start to tear it apart, a couple days before the vote. But
I guess
I like what I've learned. I like what they've done. I like where it takes the town. We've worked hard on to be very energy efficient and conservative, and especially we're fixing infrastructure that has been bad since I joined the select board. So before I joined the select board, the public safety building has had inoperative air conditioning heating since I joined the select board. The library is a big mess, and we're fixing infrastructure programs, something that a lot of people don't want to do, and we're getting it done. We're getting it substantially done. I think it's really important. And that's why I support it. Because, I've seen boards previously that said, I don't know what to do, so I'm not going to do anything. And I think the board that's currently there has tried to be as progressive and forward-reaching as we can do. And, it's not an easy thing to go through all these things and nickel and dime them. One of the reasons I like the Siemens report is because we're getting it all done. We're not using, Joe Smith for one project and Sam Jones for a second project and Henry Smith for a third one. And then when the one goes bad, that contractor is out of business. It gives us guarantees both for energy and savings. And I think it's important. And I think it's the best we've been able to find. And it wasn't just Siemens. We're not the only people we talked to when we started this whole project, but they came with the best proposals and the best work that we could find.
I have two questions here, Mark. The first one is it possible that in the, what do you call the board materials that Janice sends out before the select board meetings, that there was more information on this? And if so, do you know which meeting it would be? I have them all sitting here. I could look if I knew.
I do not. I don't believe that was the energy report was part of the packet.
Okay.
And if I remember correctly, but
okay,
it was quite a long time ago.
Right. And I guess the other thing I would just say here is that I think Mark's point about so many projects that the town needs to do being tied up with this. I think the point the Energy Committee itself has repeatedly made, that things should be done faster, and why are we waiting and waiting for us then to come back and say, and leave the impression and perhaps contribute to a defeat of a proposal, which would then send the whole thing back to the drawing boards, potentially. You know, we have to think hard about that, I think. And I don't know what liability Siemens would have as opposed to us under this sort of contract if the geothermal doesn't work out well. But I mean, they are making explicit promises about it, right? I don't know, maybe
there are guarantees that everything works. If it doesn't work, they pay for it. There are no costs to the town after this. If things don't work, they pay for it, they repair it, they fix it. And they guarantee the percentage of savings that they say that are in the contract.
I think it's a shame to have the Energy Committee be among those.
So we gotta, if there's anything else, we got to quick because I have another meeting I have to go to at 7 o'clock.
Okay, guys, can we just move to a couple of other things that are on the agenda?
Should we discuss about how people on the Energy Committee feel? Because I think it is important that we weigh in. This is the single largest energy decision that's been made in the town, and maybe for the next decade. And does not appear to be clear agreement. In fact, I'm quite sure there's not even much understanding about this whole thing, since none of us, including Mark, I don't believe you've seen the actual base document that we've been promised from Siemens. And I, for one, can't imagine voting in the affirmative for this project. I would absolutely vote in the affirmative for the option 3 that does not include the geothermal. Everything in there makes sense from what I know and what I can see. But I will be advocating loud and strong not to vote positive on the first one, but vote yes on the third. And I believe there's an option at the beginning of the meeting to raise that as a possibility.
And then please
not unlike
do
a town meeting where you can alter the agenda based on the vote of the people in the room.
And then Brian, please do that, you know, and if it makes sense and that's how people feel about it. I will talk to Bob about it tomorrow. And you know, I did it, you know, when you first brought it up with me weeks ago, and you know, the conversation we had is, you know, not sure. And I thought maybe we dig into it again, and that hasn't happened because he was pretty convinced.
So
Mark, could you go ahead and have that conversation with Bob, and then can you summarize that in an email to all of us?
I'll do what I can. Yes.
The only thing I would say, Mark, when you're having that conversation with Bob,
Yep.
it is not going to look good when Brian goes to that meeting and says, "What are you doing?" It's not going to look good.
I understand.
And I know that you probably understand that, but you can just pass that along to Bob. It's like, there's got to be a better way. We want to be allies.
I think we've repeated the message a number of times tonight. I get it.
Got it.
Let me make the phone call. I wrote the note to do the phone call 20 minutes ago. I get it. I understand.
Okay, thank you. Good discussion.
Thanks, Mark.
Mila Plavsic has been, was unable to get on right away because they lost power. And so she had to get that sorted out. She's on, I see her name there. And Mila, I don't know whether you can come on there's a video. Good, fantastic. So I'd like to introduce Mila Plavsic, and you can correct my pronunciation, I hope. And she came on board Watershed in September as a science teacher, and was particularly interested in joining Watershed because of the new Climate Action and Leadership Lab, which is abbreviated CALL, CALL. And she's excited about Camden goals. So in terms of energy. So Mila, I just wanted you to have an opportunity to talk about your work and how you see your work with your interactions with the town and with the energy goals of the town.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, sorry about the technical difficulties earlier, but I've got Wi-Fi and lights back, so I'm having to use my phone for this, but we'll make it work. Yeah, thank you so much. I just wanted to say hello to everybody. In this age of COVID, it's a little bit hard to get to know everyone, but I'm doing my best. I've had some good meetings with folks at the town and with Anita. And we have Hallie on board for the next few months, which is fantastic. I assume you already got to meet her. Is that true, Anita?
Yes, we
Okay,
have.
great.
Great.
Yeah, so, in talking to different folks, it seemed like one of the ways that the Watershed students could chip in this year, again, given the constraints of COVID and never knowing if we're going to all have to go remote again at some point. The idea that keeps coming to the surface is working on the town's comprehensive plan and picking up on some of the work that a Bowdoin College student did this summer. And Jeremy's going to share that with me. And really working to get climate change mitigation and adaptation language into the comprehensive plan. I've heard, in talking with Allison and Anita, that there is some interest in that and moving that through the planning board and hopefully getting that voted on in November. And so, it seemed like a good fit. I've got 7 wonderful students who are very, this particular bunch is a little bit shy and a little bit wonky. And I think it's a good fit for them to go through and help update that and carry through with some of the work that's already been done and get that, move the ball down the field in that regard. So, we may take on something a little more splashy or ambitious next year, but I think for this year, that seems to be what kept coming up as something that would be useful, doable, and maybe not as glamorous, but still important. So I welcome the input from all the members of the Energy Committee on that. And I look forward to working with you all a bit more as we proceed through the spring and hopefully eventually can meet you all in person. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Fantastic, Mila. Well, thank you very much. We're very excited to have so much help from you and from Hallie in pursuing the town's goals. I mentioned to the committee this evening that yesterday the select board put me on board the planning board. So we can work hand in hand in some of that verbiage and work. So that'll be neat to work with you on that from that direction as well. I'll stay on this energy committee and also be on the planning board.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I heard that news from Allison and I wasn't sure if you'd shared it with everyone. So congratulations and thank you so much for doing that. That's going to make everything a lot simpler, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, good. I hope so. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Mila?
I'm going to have to leave. I'm sorry.
All right.
And I have
just
to as
wanted.
well.
Okay. It's almost 7, so we normally would finish by now. Just wanted to mention that the locations for the charging stations, for the EV charging stations, where the town is working with CMP of Angrid in these 4 new charging stations. That location has been chosen. It's in the public safety parking lot, the second entrance furthest uphill the 4 spaces closest to that entrance facing the road. So that's where our new charging stations will be at. I'm not sure when that'll happen. And the town has to throw in 19,000 towards that. And Evangrid is putting in 16,000, 4,000 per space. So that location was chosen because it will cost us the least in terms of the infrastructure that will be required. So I got a little more information. If you have more questions, just give me a call and I'll fill you in. And the town solar question, just to give you a catch up, Jeremy is still working with Knox County on the airport location for 1.8 to 2 million kilowatt hours. It turns out that the location at the airport that they had in mind can't carry as much solar as they'd hoped because of wetland issues and permitting issues. So they're going to be using some of the Owl's Head Transportation Museum land, and the area is smaller. So that's still in the permitting phase. However, Jeremy tells me that Camden is the biggest buyer, interested party in the use of that solar. So his phraseology was that Camden was in the driver's seat. I'm not sure exactly what that means when all is said and done, but anyway, the solar, they'd be leasing from the Transportation Museum. It's no longer a county project as such. So they expect to get the permitting and everything done this spring. So that's the catch up on that. And with that, I think we've covered our agenda. So thank you everybody for attending, and thank you, Sarah, for.
Yeah, before we adjourn for the night, I would like to really get everybody to perhaps weigh in on where we might stand individually, or just take a vote on how the committee comes down on this proposal for the town. I just couldn't be more vehemently opposed to option 1 or more supportive of option 3. We're talking about a 0.004 return on investment. So that's less than half a cent for every dollar invested for the solar. I mean, for the geothermal.
Brian, can I ask where are you finding those numbers?
So if you look at the proposals from the website, which is the only public information available on this, in fact, the only information available at all.
PowerPoint, or is it something else besides the PowerPoint?
It's page 11 of the, I guess, I don't know. Yeah, it was probably a PowerPoint originally. Yeah, it says PowerPoint. Page 11.
Okay.
And
would you tell us so we can look on our computers right now what you're looking at, what website?
Maybe you could
so
just
go
share.
to the Camden Town website.
Can you share
right,
your screen or send us the link?
Siemens. I can. I'm on my phone.
Oh, okay.
Because I started the conversation from my car.
All right.
And I can't log in again because there's nobody available to let me into the meeting because Janice has left.
Got it.
Janice's name is
someone else could do that, unless someone's been reassigned as the administrator of the meeting.
I have not. Janice's name is still there, though.
Okay, so it says special town meeting on January 25th. That's the one. Visit here for more info.
Correct.
And then
there's
I
think you have 3 choices. I believe this was the middle choice. When I navigated there, it was 20 minutes ago, though.
Yeah, you can download the performance contract, but I believe that performance contract is I assume specific to the first option. That the detailed contract is written for the scope of work. That's the sort of number one of the three options.
Yeah, if you click on the second one, it says for more detailed information, the building improvements and energy upgrades.
On the building improvement.
I just sent the link in the comments here, so you can click on it.
And then go down to page 11.
I mean, we went through this at an earlier meeting and you went through it, Brian, and that was your off the cuff assessment at that time, which, yeah, and I mean, I don't know that any of us are in a position to make a detailed assessment.
So Brian, the energy and operational savings, you're comparing the 45,000 to the 47,000 numbers.
Correct.
And you're saying that's 2,000 a year, multiply that by the, what is it, 17 years?
No, if you just look at the total project cost, 2.3 million versus 1.8 million. And the only difference between the two of them is the geothermal.
That's
Right,
not
but that's
the boiler replacement at the Snowball was another difference.
Yes, well, this is the marginal cost of the geothermal.
right.
Because we have to do something, or we assume we have to do something. If you've ever seen the boiler in there, it looks like, do you remember the story, Mike Mulligan and his steam shovel? Yeah, that's what's in the basement.
So Brian, what you're saying is basically we're going to invest $500,000 in a geothermal system that's going to give us $2,000 in annual savings. And over the course of a 17-year contract, that means it's only $34,000. No, that's not right.
Yes,
No,
that is correct. That's the crazy part right there, Heather. That's the crazy.
Right. And so what Mark was saying earlier is that the reason that the select board was interested was on the assumption that you would be building a building there that would have much higher HVAC costs than that marginal 2,000 in the future, and that the geothermal would be sized for that larger, like as yet not an expense that we're not yet seeing, that we're anticipating we would be seeing in the future. That's the justification.
My understanding, yeah.
Correct. For a building that may or may not get built.
Yeah,
I mean, I'd love to see it built, but I would much rather see that $500,000 put into making it much more passive and heating it with heat pumps.
Right.
Nobody would make this investment on their own home. I know that because that's the business I'm in. There's just nobody. The richest person I've ever sold a job to that for money doesn't matter to, they wouldn't do this.
I mean, if you just, it's pretty damning if you just look at page 11 and you see annual contribution below that, the second thing where it says energy and operational savings, $47,000, 22%. That's for option 1, and option 3 is
45,000.
20%. So there's a 2% difference. This is absolutely nuts. I agree.
And I think we could possibly be the ones to drive this towards option 3.
Absolutely.
If we were to come out and say, no, we don't support this. This is why. I mean, to some extent, we've been jumped over by the select board and not really been very involved in this.
And administratively, it would require proposing an adjustment to the language to the warrant, but that proposed new language on the warrant would have to be done at the town meeting. So you'd need to come to the town meeting prepared with your proposed edits to the warrant.
Exactly. I believe that is something that can be done. Well, because I know it's at actual town meeting, that's the process, if this follows the same process, but I'm not a parliamentarian.
It strikes me is that it would be, I mean, I know that Mark is going to approach Bob and there's going to be some internal discussion in the town meeting. But, you know, I hope that Mark got the message. I mean, if many of us show up at this meeting and are not in favor of the warrant, it's not going to look good for the town. It's not going to look good for the Energy Committee. It's just a bad, but it's been, you know, it's just bad. And I don't know what the solution is, but it seems like there's got to be a way to solve this in advance of the meeting.
One of the things that I'm still a little bit confused by is lacking, is there some sort of estimate of the square footage of the building that would be using this? You know, my limited understanding, having followed ground source heat systems over the years, is that when you get to a certain scale, they can make sense. I'm assuming they're using water from the lake, from the pond.
No,
No?
they're going to be drilling wells.
Okay. Maine Audubon in Falmouth put one in with wells. I'm just actually somewhat amazed by the price as an add-on as compared to, you know, what it might cost for air source heat pumps, unless you're talking a really, really big building. Because, I mean, it's been, I used to work for Maine Audubon, and it's been 20 years since they put that building in, but I think they had something of around, and it's a fairly large building. It might be 8,000 square feet, something like that, maybe 10,000. And I think it was about, you know, I know things are a lot more expensive, but just by scale, it was around $45,000 additional. So I don't understand the $500,000, unless it's a really big building where they have a lot of wells and they have a very large buried loop, or many of them. That's the part that I'm a little stunned by. If they were putting in a, you know, I just, that's the part I don't understand, is how they're even coming up with that price if they don't have the building design where they have an envelope, heat loss calculation, all of that stuff. It's so I as far as saying yes or no on it, I mean, what you're pointing out, I'm ashamed to say that this is the first, I haven't been paying enough attention, and this is the first that I'm aware of this. I'm sure I missed the last meeting. Maybe this is when it was discussed, but anyway, it's the first I'm aware of it. And based on what you've said, Brian, and looking at that one slide on the PowerPoint, it doesn't make any sense to me either. But I don't know if I know enough to vote at this point.
Would you mind if I invite Bob Falciani to tune in right now, if he's available?
That's fine. I had an extensive conversation with Bob about this, and quite frankly, it seemed that he was very supportive at that time. And so I'm a little shocked that the select board voted 5-0 to send this thing through. And it is so quick. Imagine, you know, Phil, super bright guy, you know, you're on the Energy Committee and you're not well informed about it. I don't get the sense that anybody really is, especially because when we did this process, exact same process with an energy audit with a different company called Cordia 15 years ago when I was on the first, or 12 years ago when I was on the Energy Committee, the first iteration, we had a 300-page document. We don't have anything from Siemens like that. Or if we do, it hasn't been released to the public. This is ridiculous. It's just trying to ram it through quickly. And there's a lot of good in here, and I don't know, it's killing me.
Well, I do think, to be fair here, that the select board discussed this throughout the months when we didn't meet. They met.
I was at the select board meeting when it came up originally.
You were.
And
Okay.
I said, you know, this is a wonderful overview, but where's the meat? And we've never seen it. Bob promised to get it to me. The select board made a similar commitment. We've not seen it. I don't know. It's almost as if they're hiding something, although I don't like to think that way.
Anita, I don't think getting Bob online right now would be that helpful, but it might be if we had some specific things that we could ask for example, is there a more detailed breakdown that we'd be able to look at to understand this more fully? Because it appears that the return to the town for this option is inadequate, but maybe we're missing something, you know, to put it from that, at that angle.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that, you know, if Brian and I and Phil and other members of the Energy Committee show up at this special town warrant meeting and bring up these concerns, it could be quite contentious and difficult, and it doesn't need to be that way. There's a couple.
It certainly feels like it's less likely to be that way if individual outreach, you know, especially from you, Pete, and is it Pete or Peter?
Yeah, Pete's fine, yeah.
From Pete and Brian, you know, directly to not only Bob, but also Audra, right? I mean, I think Audra and Jeremy and the staff probably also have a lot invested in this at this point, and it is more likely to be productive at the actual special meeting if the staff are expecting and maybe could have help prepare in advance whatever the edits to the warrant would actually need to say.
Yeah, and I'm concerned about doing that individually because we've been admonished in the past not to contact the town officials individually with our concerns that arise out of the Energy Committee. So I'm hoping that Anita can provide some guidance on that.
You need to have your questions answered. That's a burning desire very clearly, and we have what, 9 days or something before that vote. Not very many, and it seems like something that is more of a discussion issue rather than a bunch of email exchanges. So what I could do is set up a Zoom meeting, see what Bob recommends with regard to who would be the best source of such information, the answers that you need, and we could set up a Zoom meeting. That's the only other thing I can think of.
I think that makes sense, although we need to remember that Mark's supposed to email us back tomorrow. So perhaps we should say that's what we will do unless Mark comes up with some different proposal, in which case we'll go along with Mark. But otherwise, yeah, it's like a Zoom meeting or something. I think that's a good idea. I would support that.
So if Bob Falciani texted me back, said he's in his car, he'll be home in 5 minutes, and he could join us then if you guys want to hang in there and discuss it with him directly at this time. What do you guys want to do?
Brian?
I mean, I don't have an unlimited amount of time on this either. I could probably put in more time, you know, than anyone else on this so far, aside from perhaps the select board. But I agree. I think we're at a critical point here. Where you know, it would be horrible not to be able to support this thing. But and I don't know. It sounds like the more people are learning, the more questions there are. I don't know. I'd be interested, Heather. You're not an official member of the committee, but I'd be interested in what your thoughts are. I mean, you play in this market as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I tend to be fairly skeptical of the performance contracting in general, but I understand the value of it. and that it's not just financial return that's important, that the quality of space, you know, particularly for those who work in the town buildings, but also, you know, people who go to the Opera House and go to the Snow Bowl. So I mean, I understand there's comfort and basic performance issues that require this infrastructure upgrades, and that we're getting a lot of that out of these packages. But that said, I am in general skeptical of the performance contracting approach in a lot of instances, because of the fact that they often, you know, kind of skim off the top of the easy stuff to do. But I mean, you know all about that, Brian. So that said, you know, I would tend to default to the people who've been involved in this conversation and discussion for much longer than I have, because I have not been following any of these details of the infrastructure needs, or which energy systems currently exist in these buildings, and how bad and how old they are, you know, how to prioritize. So I'm really just, I really do feel like an observer at this point. But I agree that looking at these numbers around the annual contributions and the annual savings, it's pretty hard to understand how you justify that addition of the geothermal, besides, you know, just not wanting to replace an old boiler with a new boiler that is burning fossil fuel. But that's an awful lot to pay, you know, just for that. So yeah.
So I'm trying to look at this from, you know, how they were looking at it, because I agree with you guys that looking at these three options, you know, there's sort of a disconnect in terms of efficiency and economics. So I'm trying to see the other perspectives, and I think that obviously we don't know if another lodge is going to be built, but I can tell you that I have been incredibly uncomfortable about a new lodge being built, and that discomfort primarily revolves around energy represented, the energy use represented by such a building. People going in and out, the humongous windows, they may be double pane, but that still doesn't mean, as Brian well knows, it doesn't mean that they're super efficient. So I'm thinking that the geothermal relates to future. I'm sure we could have the same discussion about wastewater treatment plant, the efficiency of that energy being used partially by the middle school. Does it really pay for itself? I don't know. I've not looked at it.
I just had a thought, which could be completely from out of left field, but is there some understanding between the non-town sort of folks that are interested in the lodge that are saying, hey, we'll pony up the 500K for the geothermal if you let us build the lodge? I don't know. I mean, that now it could be plausible. You could say, well, I could see how you might be, that might be interesting to ponder, but I mean, that's the only thing I can think of that would make sense that for the town to spend $500,000 for a $2,000 a year change.
I feel like, you know, where I'm sitting and where I will continue to sit with this, I'm glad to weigh in at some point, is that there's clearly not enough information here.
Yeah.
Certainly not for me to be able to come up with an opinion, because that one slide on that, I find it, I would be surprised if at least one of the 5 people on that committee didn't notice that. And so I feel like we're missing information otherwise. And I'm going to sit with that until I, you know, learn that maybe we aren't missing any information, that's just what it is. But it seems like it's quite possible that we don't have enough here to work with.
The other thing which I think is important relative to the Snow Bowl, and I think Mark was kind of hinting at it, is that any discussion about major infrastructure investments, whether it be a geothermal system for HVAC and or a new investment in a lodge, we got to be real about the fact that we're getting rain in the middle of January, and the Snow Bowl has yet to be open top to bottom this year, and it's unclear if it ever will be because of climate change. And the potential future business model has got to be about mountain biking or something else for it to make sense for the town to continue to invest in the facility. Sad as that is for all of us, like that we cannot count on the snow here that we had 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And it just isn't clear if that's part of the discussion or not at all.
Well, I agree strongly with that.
And when it was my memory, having been in the town offices when some of this was discussed, that when your concerns were brought up, they were pushed aside to a large extent. That, you know, people were hopeful about, let's move ahead with what we have. We'll have snowmaking equipment that works at higher temperatures and so on. But it was, you know, there was a very enthusiastic group of people, and they had moved along quite a bit, and they didn't want to hear about that aspect of things, or that was my impression. So I don't know where we are now, but that's what it was when I was sitting in on some of those meetings.
Well, let me ask Anita, where do we stand? I mean, have you and Bob come to some understanding that he's coming on, and that's what we're waiting for, or should we try to get him some other day after we see what Mark does, or what should we do here?
He is going to be on any minute. He just read the text I just sent him, and I suspect
there he is.
Hi, Bob.
Okay.
Thank you for coming, Bob. Okay, you're mute. You're still mute. Can you hear us? Can you unmute yourself?
Unmuted.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Bob.
Oh, sure.
So, Brian, we've been having a discussion regarding the three options that Siemens presented, and option one that the select board chose. And the question revolves around the expense, the $500,000 expense of the geothermal heating and cooling system at the Snow Bowl, and the anticipated savings of, you guys mentioned the anticipated savings being something like $2,000 a year in energy and operational savings of option compared to option 3, which does not have the geothermal heating and cooling system at Snow Bowl. So the question is, how can we justify spending $500,000 for such a minimal contribution towards the energy savings? So can you help explain that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, remember the geothermal system is not being designed for what we have now. And I've repeated that a number of times during our meeting to the select board. It's being designed to be able to handle something else we would do out there, another building, expansion or whatever on the facility. That's where the energy savings will come from downstream. Also, the reason for doing it now, obviously, is the cost of installing it later for an expansion would be more expensive.
That's assuming, Bob, that the cost of a new system later would be higher. But if we look at the example of solar, for example, the technological improvements, the heat pump improvements as well, it's less expensive now to put in a high quality heat pump than it was 5 years ago. And I think that's very likely to continue.
Well, we're not talking about a long time period here. We're talking about a year.
We're going to build a lodge in a year?
We're going to build something within a year, year and a half, yes.
So this is kind of news to me. I'm on the building committee for the lodge. When is this coming about?
Does the town has a building committee?
No, the Ragged Mountain Recreation Area committee, which is jointly composed of members. I'm the representative from the Parks and Rec Committee.
Okay, fine. This discussion has nothing to do with Ragged Mountain Foundation or its potential $6 million lodge. No.
I thought that's what you were talking about, is the potential new loan.
No, we're talking about a new facility. We're talking about expanding out there because a snowball, whether it has a extended life as it may not be a lodge, by the way, because the long-term projection is that, as we all know, we have global warming. If we project out the global warming, we don't have a snowball for 10 more years. We just don't. So whatever we're looking, the town is contemplating, and we just started the process, which I described to Brian, was to look at what options we might have to do something out there. It was not specifically addressing the lodge recommendation from Ragged Mountain Foundation.
Right, so
it could handle that lodge, but whether it would go with that option or not is something we need to work on in parallel.
So,
but wouldn't a new building out there require some sort of town approval?
Of course.
Okay,
of
so
course.
there's an idea about it, but there's no guarantee that a building's going to be going up there even in a year.
Fine, there's no guarantee.
I mean,
I'm just telling you what the plans are, and that's what we discussed in our meetings, and that's what the objective was. And I made it very clear during the meeting that option one makes sense if we proceed in parallel with doing something out there. If you don't, you're absolutely right. I would agree. We don't need to spend money on something we don't have a need for. And we have been taking some steps in that direction, not myself specifically, but Audra and company have been doing some homework in that regard.
So look, I just have a process question, Bob.
Sure.
Sorry, Pete. If the town at the town meeting, the option one is voted down, what happens then?
We'd have to put it on the shelf.
So you couldn't change. You couldn't have a vote at the. This is process again. You couldn't have a vote at the special town meeting that said, all those in favor of option one vote aye. All those in favor of option two vote aye. All those in favor of three vote aye. Is that a possibility? Could that be done parliamentary?
Well, Pete, you probably could. The only question I would have is, is whether Siemens has to go back and do any more homework on option three, is what you're talking about, and correct the numbers. This whole thing occurred because of the financing, and in our town meeting form of government doesn't allow us to sign up for anything beyond a 3-year duration, all right, without going to town meeting. We all know that. And even though, by the way, just a little background here, the Siemens contract has a non-appropriations clause in it, which says if we were planning to go to June to a secret ballot, which I would have loved to do. But and if it was voted down in June, there would be no exposure to the town. The problem we got into was when we decided to check the financing community. We got 2, 3, 4. Well, actually, we got 5 loan quotes back, and 2 of them were the lowest we've ever seen, and the lowest Siemens has ever seen. But all we had to do was sign on to the loan, even though we weren't going to draw on it. We can't do that because we don't have the authority, and that's why the meeting is being, by the special town meeting. So anything that could cause a glitch in the works, and that could cause a glitch in the works, could cause us to have to go to June.
I think that people see the economics of taking out a loan when the conditions, economic rationale makes sense. I think people are struggling over the expense of the geothermal and whether it would, and the indications based on this chart of the 3 options, the cost versus payback. So they kind of want to see how you guys saw that as being
Well,
a good economic
yeah,
investment.
well, you know, to the comments that have been made about payback, as it were, there are a number of projects in this packet which you're aware of, and Opera House, as example, Town Hall, where the payback isn't there. There isn't any. We have to stop this building from bleeding vapor, causing it to disintegrate. Because in the next phase, if we do a next phase, it gets approved, we have to still do installation work on the roof, or something up there has to happen. That's where the payback will come there, for example. So we have a number of projects like that in this packet that don't show. That's why the whole packet doesn't show more than what's I think the total payback is in the order of, including the libraries, in the order of $1 million, something like that. I forget the exact number off the top of my head. It's 2.3 million in maximum loan, and about I think another town is $40,000 a year, and I believe the library is another $10,000 or $15,000 a year. So it's 55,000 or 60,000 times 17. And that's where the number comes from.
Bob, I just want, you know, I want to make sure that, because I've been to some of these special town meetings, and there could be 10 people.
Pete, I totally agree with you. It scares the hell out of me.
Right. So I can just imagine someone who's quite knowledgeable about energy going to this special town meeting and asking these questions in such a way that the rest of the people there, who may or may not have understood, are starting to go, wait a minute, I don't know that thought I was going to vote for this, but now I'm not. And this thing goes down. Whereas there's no question in my mind that option 3, everyone will get behind. That's a no-brainer. So I would ask that you consider thinking about whether you'd rather have option 3 go through with excellent support, or option 1 go down acrimoniously after, you know, debate. So I don't see how option 1 is going to make it through.
Okay. Oh, yeah, good point. Excellent point. I think
I would like to be a supporter.
Oh, I get something. Me too. Obviously, me too. And we all want to do the right thing. You know, that's why I admonished the board during the discussion of 1 versus 3, that the big difference is whether or not there's this actually saving money from what we've been shown in geothermal in particular for the potential expansion of the snowball.
Okay, I think we've said, I feel like what we're trying to communicate to you is it's going to be difficult for number 1 to pass in that meeting.
Okay.
But that I think number 3 could pass easily.
Okay.
So, Bob, a question that I have, if I might, is this like the town meeting, the regular town meeting, where someone could, you know, propose an alteration to it, and if it gets voted up, then it could be changed?
Yes, it could be.
Because maybe we could pass option 3 right at this meeting, get the great financing, and all of the things that were generally agreed as a win-win.
The problem is the financing that was bid was for $2.3 million. For option 1, if we do, yes, the answer to your question is yes. We can go bid option 3, which is a lower number. We have to rebid it.
So I checked the interest rates. They haven't changed much in the last couple, days. I can't imagine that this is going to change dramatically. There's absolutely no indication. Now, you may be a better economic procrastinator than I am, but prognosticator, excuse me, not
no,
it's too long a meeting.
It gets complicated. The issue, it goes like this. Let's presume that and I've never had any problem with option 1 versus 3. It's just a big difference in my mind was the snowball and expansion there, and commitment of the town to do something about it near term. If we went with option one, no, sorry, three, a cheaper price, and let's presume we have to go to the market to rebid it, then we have to go to either another special town meeting or to June. Either one will take time, and it's probably going to wind up, I don't know which one we could do, because it takes time to bid the package and get the numbers back, of course. And then if it goes to June, the big fear I would have is that the proposals that Siemens has got for all of the work will have to be rebid also.
So, Bob, one
My
question.
understand. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Pete.
One question I have, Bob, is that let's just imagine the worst case scenario.
Okay.
In my mind, the worst case scenario is option one passes.
Yep.
And nothing happens on the Snow Bowl in the foreseeable future, because I'm here to tell you that there will be massive opposition in the town to any sort of large scale project there without real, without a lot of, outreach, vetting, careful design,
Sure.
community involvement, which might,
Sure.
so we're talking 5 years of preparation to get anything going here. 3 years in the best possible scenario, and after all that, if nothing happens, we have a $500,000 white elephant that the town is paying for, and reaping $2,000 a year, $2,000 a year in benefits. Where if we took that $500,000, for instance, and spent it on, let's just say, took the $500,000 and invested in community solar to offset the cost of snowmaking at the Snow Bowl, or at a later date, energy use of the building, we're way ahead of the game.
First of all, I don't agree that this is a major project. What we're looking at is the options that are probably the same cost as the groomer we were contemplating for the Snow Bowl. This is not, it has been previously presented as a major project by some of the options that have been discussed. This is not one of those. This is something.
Which is not a major project?
Of the expansion of the whatever we put out at the Snow Bowl facility wise. It's not a major project. It's moderate at best. That's why it can be done in I believe, you're right. It takes time it has to be community outreach. It has to be, involvement by the public. The funding has to be approved. Yeah, you're right about all that. That's absolutely true.
So Bob, when we get what is the possibility that we get that funding, don't use it, and sort of give back part of it? We still have to pay on the full amount, right?
No. We do have that's a guaranteed maximum price. If we've already discussed a few things about with Siemens about the possibility of changing some of the programming, for example, a few items which might tweak the cost of the library or some of our project. If they spend 2.2, that's what we spend. If they spend 2 million, that's what we spend.
So if we go ahead with the financing that was bid on the basis of an expectation that we do option one, and subsequent to taking on that financing, we say, well, we're actually going to withdraw some of these projects and we don't need that much money. Can we continue by only borrowing 1.8 million from you at the same rate?
Yes.
At the same rate.
Yes. Well, the loan is it's a loan. You pay off what you spend. Of course, Siemens example. Siemens, I can assure you, has some contingency in that number because not everything has been completely designed. So if we don't spend the 2.3 for whatever reason, for example, we had talked the other day. It's a little silly thing, but there was some $14,000 to do the roof hatch on the town office building, and we said, it's probably not worth it. The hatch has a problem on the roof, and if they said, fine, if we want, we can take it out later. So they would take it out and reduce the price by $14,000.
They do. So do we really have a problem here, Brian and Peter?
So
If we accept the
the
bid?
financing, the
and
total
bid,
financing cost for this option one is $488,000. That's the interest cost. That happens to also be the same cost of the solar, the differential cost of the solar.
Solar?
I'm sorry. I said this meeting's gone on way too long. My head's fried. Geothermal. Thank you, Bob. Geothermal. As I say, the idea of running this through super quickly, while it has some appeal, I don't buy into the argument that the financing is going to change dramatically. And I think it's going to be incredibly difficult to pull this geothermal out once option one passes.
Mm-hmm.
well, what do you think,
So-
Bob? Would you agree with
I
that?
don't-
That's just where I come down.
Well, first of all, I don't make the decisions, as you know. This has to be decisions made by the board or by the town about not doing, let's say, this geothermal. But if, in fact, let's say something, geothermal is not going to be at the front end of this project. It's going to be into it by some time period because everything has to be prioritized. If we were, for some reason, say, to reduce the scope of anything, that would reduce the cost to the project. If we were to eliminate or just do the geothermal just for what we have there now, of course, that would drop the price dramatically. Drop
Or
the
what about if we voted yes on option one and then appealed to the select board? If one or more of us appealed to the select board to please revisit the concept of doing geothermal and undertaking that $500,000, then what I think you're saying, I think I'm understanding is that we could prevail upon the select board after this vote to withdraw the geothermal from the that portion. We'd still get the same rate of financing for the amount of money that we end up spending.
That's correct. Yeah, I would, in the back of my mind has always been, remember this whole package was put together with, I would say, a design development level of design. We don't have complete design and everything. And that's going to be part of the process in the next months. But, there's part of me that I understand what Pete and what Brian and I have had a discussion about this. I've had mixed emotions about 1 versus 3. I wouldn't have been heartbroken if we had picked 3, by the way. I wouldn't have heartbroken at all. But I think absolutely, in fact, I would like to involve people like Pete and Brian in the discussion as we go into this project, because among others, by the way, there are others who I've spoken to about this, who we can brainstorm this and see what the heck makes sense, but not the least of which is a conceptual discussion, which, Brian, that's why I emailed you last few days about getting together with you to talk about where we are at with this general discussions about, well, the snowball in general, and of course this potential facility out there. It's evolving very quickly, but yeah, I'd be very interested and supportive of ideas to make this whole package better. I feel very, very, very frustrated that we had to go to this special town meeting thing. It's all because of we wouldn't have had to do this if it hadn't been for the financing thing and our inability to sign anything, even though there wouldn't be $1 drawn on the loan. We legally can't sign it.
Well, honestly, I'm kind of glad about that in this particular instance, because and Bob, I'll just say it again. If I were you, what I would do is make it so that at that town meeting, if 1 fails, 3 passes. And I'm going to leave it at that.
Okay, thanks, Pete. That's fine. I understand your point, and believe me, we've wrestled with that exact question time and time again in the last weeks. But I get it.
Okay, Pete, you understand though what Bob said, that if one fails and 3 passes, then the bid process has to be redone. And the bid percentage interest rate is not.
That doesn't make sense to me. That doesn't make any sense to me, because if they've presented you with three proposals,
Mm-hmm.
why would they preferentially, I mean, I guess you're talking about the loan people, the banks are going to say, oh, we'll loan you this much, but we're not going to loan you $500,000 less. I don't get it.
No. They would gladly loan us $500,000 less. Of course they would, but that's the piece we would have to check on, and it could possibly be a different interest rate.
Well, you've got 9 days, so I would suggest that you do that due diligence.
We don't have 9 days to. We have 4 days to the meeting, and then if we rebid it, it usually takes about a month.
Well, I mean, maybe in 4 days you could get a commitment from the bank or some number.
We'd have to package it, and it took us, I think, as I recall, 3 or 4 weeks to package this package and send it to the banks and get their response. So we can do that, but it's not going to be days. We're talking about weeks.
Okay.
So here's another question for you, Bob, because again, you understand this process stuff much better than I think any of us. Could a proposal be raised at the meeting to alter the language of it to adopt option 1, but remove the geothermal and include the boiler replacement of option 3? So we're actually approving option 1, but we're already making a change to it.
That's what
that would get us the financing that's essential, get approval in the time frame that makes sense.
Brian,
makes the most sense, I guess.
That's not making sense to me. If we approve option 1 without the geothermal and put in the the heat pump, basically, that's option 3.
Correct.
And
but it could be called option 1 with modification.
But I think what you're saying is, but that changes the bid number that the banks have bid for a loan.
Or could we nuance the language such that option 1
I know where you're going.
Option 3.
I get where you're going. What I would
because I think we could easily get that passed.
Yeah,
without any
option
dissension.
3. Option 3 has everybody's vote.
Well, everybody we're talking to's vote. That's true.
And I think that you would have strong advocates from everybody that you're talking to here at that meeting.
Yeah, I understand for option 3, but I'm just trying to explain to you, there's numerous people who prefer option 1.
Got it. Well, we'll see how many people. We'll just find out at the meeting who shows up, right?
There'll probably be 3 people, Pete, but you're absolutely right. I worry about that, but I know there are a number of people who are supportive of the option in general. And they're probably not as armed technically as some of you are, but they just like the whole concept. Now, is it enough to look? I'm not going to sit here and predict a vote. I'm not going to make decisions on predicting a vote, nor should I, try to turn the world upside down because there's 6 or 12 people who are saying we don't like it. I'm just trying to explain to you the process.
Understood.
That's all I can do. That's
That's fine.
I don't have any skin in this game. Honestly, I think that whichever way we go, the worst scenario is we don't get it done and we have to go into June and figure it all out and see what it's going to cost us.
Got it.
That's it.
Well, we'll see you at the meeting, I guess.
Yeah, I hope so.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us, Bob.
Really no biggie, no biggie. I know it's a complicated issue, and you guys are, like I said, well armed with the information. You've got all the buttons right. It's just that and I got to tell you, bottom line is this whole thing going to town meeting. That was not my favorite idea. The least of which I'm not a real big fan of special town meetings because I think there can be not enough people, as Pete mentioned, showing up, making a decision for the whole town. Would much prefer to go to our secret ballot in June.
Well, what would you prognosticators think about how the interest rate might change between now and June, or say May, especially if we have
It's
an
more, well, the interest,
new-
that's anybody's, I don't think the interest rates are going to double between now and June. I wouldn't say that. But it isn't only the interest rate being, remember this whole package we did with Siemens was the original estimate that they did was done at 2.5%, because that was the market at the time, only 2 months ago. And now it's at this low 2%. It isn't only the interest rate that's going to be troublesome as we go forward to June. We knew that. We have to rebid the engineering and construction costs because the proposals aren't going to last. The proposers will want, the proposers, contractors will want changes. Some of the work that was being, take longer because some of the work needs to be done during the summer months and not in the winter months because of like the library HVAC and that kind of thing. So there are other complications on the list that make it a little bit more sticky going to the June time period.
Well, I would like to say that just from my own point of view, I would be in favor of voting yes on the vote. And I do believe that our system of government enables us and the select board to make adjustments on what they choose to do with the funds made available. And I think that his point about the cost of construction and rebidding, we know from Pathways Committee and working with DOT and contractors for doing roads that the amount that prices can leap up are astounding, and it happens in a pretty short time. So
yeah,
this is not the only part of the project, the geothermal, that they're trying to nail in. He's talking about all these other aspects of the improvements that are going to be nailed down and have been bid that have to be rebid. That scares me. What doesn't scare me is that I don't believe that because we voted for option one, that the town is absolutely required to put in geothermal if the select board and citizens come to decide that geothermal at the Snow Bowl is not needed. We know the other work is needed. So I just based on how bidding goes and construction costs and bids and all that, I would rather go forward and then withdraw pieces of that project in the future.
Yeah, I think that plays in my mind too. I've always thought that would be the approach anyway, because I'm a typical engineer. I don't commit to anything until we have to. And if we detect in the next, say, 6 months or less that the Snow Bowl, in particular, this facility idea may go the way Pete suggests it's going, then I'm on the same page they are. I don't think we should be spending a lot of money just to do a bunch of wells in the ground for geothermal spend that money if the vision out there gets clouded at all, and it could.
Yeah, and speaking of the vision of the Snow Bowl, the Snow Bowl is a major recreational asset, and we as a community, parts of the community are working towards shifting that towards other season recreational assets.
Right.
And so I do believe that the Snow Bowl, the location Ragged Mountain, will continue to be a major recreational asset, and the town will, by necessity, shift where that emphasis of recreation will be. Pump track and all the other stuff that happens. So,
well, and that's why I just blanched it a little bit when they mentioned the word lodge. I don't really want to call it a lodge because that connotes a winter utilization kind of a thing. We're trying to force the town to go to something that's going to be a draw out there 12 months of the year. And a place for mountain bikers to stop and have a bite or a beer or whatever it might be, just a place to gather.
Well, and I'm glad to hear you say that. And I'm guessing that kind of facility isn't going to need a $500,000 ground source heat pump.
I'm encouraging you.
Yeah,
not to
I-
get hung up on on installing a $500,000 geothermal heat pump. I feel like that's,
Well, that's what the proposal is.
I know, but you've heard everything else about how financing works and how bids work.
I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced. I'll be voting no. I mean, and I'll try to convince as many people as I can. But I would love to be able to vote yes on 3 at that meeting so we can move forward. So please, Bob, make that happen somehow.
Hey, Pete. Okay, guys.
Okay, Bob, thank you for coming on. We really
Yep,
appreciate
oh,
it.
no problem. Well, no problem. It's nice. Believe me, we've been discussing this in the town for weeks on end, and it's been a conundrum we're dealing with big time. So all the points are well taken, well understood, and we're going to see where it goes.
Thanks for coming, Bob.
Hey, Pete, take care. You too, Brian, and Anita, take care too.
Thank you, Bob.
Thanks, Bob. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, guys.
Good night. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Okay.
You hear a motion to adjourn.
The meeting
I
is adjourned.
second.
Sarah, can you jot down the time of the adjournment, please?
8 p.m. is what I have.